The locker slammed shut, the metallic clang echoing like a gunshot through the crowded hallway. Eli Carter, barely 16, pressed his back against the cold steel, heart pounding as laughter erupted around him. Faggot. The word hissed from Jake Hensley's lips, sharp enough to cut through the chatter and pierce Eli's chest. It was 2015, and Lincoln High in rural Ohio wasn't kind to boys like Eli. Quiet, bookish, and undeniably gay. Every day was a gauntlet, whispered slurs, shoves in the stairwell, notes stuffed into his locker with words too vile to repeat. Jake, the Golden Boy quarterback, led the charge, his charisma masking a cruelty that made Eli's high school years a living nightmare. But Eli survived, stitching his wounds in silence, dreaming of a life beyond the small town that suffocated him. 7 years later, Eli stood in a sleek Manhattan gallery, his paintings lining the walls, vibrant canvases that bled his pain and resilience. At 23, he'd built a name for himself, his art a quiet rebellion against the past. Tonight was his first solo exhibition, and the room buzzed with critics, collectors, and strangers who saw beauty where Jake once saw weakness. Eli adjusted his tie, nerves tingling, unaware that the past was about to crash into his carefully rebuilt world. Across the gallery, a man lingered by Eli's favorite piece, a stormy abstract titled Shades of Survival. He was tall, with soft brown eyes and a hesitant smile that didn't belong in the polished crowd. "This one's incredible," he said, voice low and warm. "It feels personal." Eli's breath caught. The man introduced himself as Noah Hensley, and the surname hit like a fist. Jake's younger brother. The boy who'd been a shy freshman when Eli was a senior, always on the fringes, never joining the torment but never stopping it either. What emotions surge when a name tied to your worst memories reappears in a moment of triumph? How does it feel to stand face to face with someone who shares the blood of your tormentor, yet looks at you with kindness? Eli's heart raced, torn between old wounds and the spark in Noah's gaze. They talked about art, New York, the way colors could hold memories. Noah was a photographer, his work raw and honest, capturing moments of vulnerability Eli recognized in himself. By the end of the night, numbers were exchanged, and Eli felt something dangerous, hope. But hope was a fragile thing. Back in his apartment, Eli stared at his phone, Noah's message glowing, "Loved meeting you. Coffee tomorrow." The invitation was simple, but it unraveled years of buried pain. Could he trust a Hensley? What did Noah know about Jake's cruelty? And why did his smile feel like a lifeline Eli hadn't known he needed? As Eli typed a reply, a memory flashed Jake's sneer as he'd cornered him in the locker room, the crowd's laughter drowning out his pleas. Yet Noah's face, open and unguarded, lingered too. What would it mean to let someone in, knowing their connection to your past could destroy you? Eli hit send, agreeing to coffee, stepping into a dance with fate that could either heal or break him. The next morning, sunlight spilled through the cafe window, glinting off Noah's camera as he leaned forward, eager to hear Eli's story. Their conversation flowed effortlessly. Art, dreams, the weight of small-town roots. Noah spoke of growing up in Jake's shadow, always the quieter brother, wrestling with expectations he could never meet. Jake was complicated, Noah said, his voice tightening. Eli's stomach twisted. Did Noah know the truth? Should he ask, or let the past stay buried? What risks come with opening your heart to someone tied to your pain? How do you balance the pull of attraction with the weight of history? Eli sipped his coffee, the warmth grounding him as he weighed his next move. This was no longer just about a date, it was about confronting the ghosts that still haunted him. Eli's fingers traced the rim of his coffee cup, the cafe's hum fading as Noah's words hung in the air. Jake was complicated. The phrase was a spark, Igniting memories, Eli had fought to bury fists against lockers. Cruel laughter. The sting of isolation. Yet Noah's eyes, searching and sincere, held no trace of his brother's malice. Could someone so gentle share the same blood as the boy who'd made Eli's life hell? What does it mean to trust when trust feels like a trap? How do you separate the man in front of you from the pain of the past? Eli wanted to ask about Jake, to demand answers, but the words caught in his throat. Instead, he steered the conversation to safer ground: Noah's photography, his love for capturing fleeting moments. Noah's face lit up, describing a project on New York's forgotten corners, places where beauty hid in decay. Eli recognized the passion, the need to create something whole from broken pieces. Their coffee date stretched into hours, the city blurring outside the window. Noah's laugh was soft, his questions thoughtful, and Eli felt a pull he hadn't expected, a warmth that scared him as much as it thrilled him. When Noah suggested a walk through Central Park, Eli agreed, ignoring the voice in his head whispering warnings. The park was alive with autumn's reds and golds, leaves crunching underfoot as they wandered. Noah stopped to snap a photo of a street musician, and Eli watched, mesmerized by his focus, the way he saw beauty where others passed by. But beauty couldn't erase history. As they sat on a bench, Noah's shoulder brushing his, Eli's mind flashed to a memory: Jake shoving him against a gym wall, hissing slurs while others watched. Noah had been there, hadn't he? A quiet freshman, head down, slipping away. Why hadn't he spoken up? Did he even know? Eli's chest tightened, the past and present colliding. What happens when attraction and anger tangle? Can you care for someone while questioning their silence? Eli took a breath, deciding to test the waters. Did you ever hear things about me in high school? He asked, voice steady but heart racing. Noah's smile faltered, his eyes flicking away. I heard stuff, he admitted. Jake was intense. I didn't always understand him. The vagueness stung, but Noah's hand grazed Eli's, a tentative gesture. I'm not him, Eli. I hope you know that. The words were a lifeline, but they didn't erase the doubt. Eli nodded, forcing a smile, but questions gnawed at him. What did Noah know about Jake's actions? Was he hiding something? Or was he as trapped by his brother's legacy as Eli had been? As they parted ways, Noah's text came later. Today was amazing. Can I see you again? Eli stared at the screen, torn between the thrill of connection and the fear of betrayal. Their next meeting was at Noah's studio, a cramped loft filled with prints and camera gear. Noah showed Eli his work photos of strangers' unguarded moments, each frame brimming with empathy. Eli felt exposed, as if Noah's lens could see his own scars. When Noah asked about Eli's art, the conversation turned personal. Eli shared a piece of his truth, how painting saved him, how each stroke was a fight against the voices that called him worthless. Noah listened, his silence heavy with understanding. But understanding wasn't enough. As Noah leaned closer, their knees touching, Eli's mind raced. What does it mean to fall for someone whose family caused your pain? How do you love without losing yourself? The air between them crackled, and when Noah's hand found his, Eli didn't pull away. The kiss that followed was tentative, electric, a collision of fear and longing. For a moment, the past dissolved, but as Eli left the studio, reality returned. Noah was a Hensley, and that name carried a weight Eli couldn't ignore. Eli's apartment was a sanctuary of color, canvases stacked against walls, but tonight it felt like a cage. Noah's kiss lingered on his lips, a memory that both warmed and unsettled him. He wanted to lose himself in the moment, to believe in the man who saw him so clearly. But Jake's shadow loomed, a ghost that refused to fade. What does it mean to love someone whose past is tied to your pain? How do you trust when every instinct screams to protect yourself? Eli poured his turmoil into a new painting, slashes of red and black swirling across the canvas. The work was raw, chaotic, a mirror of his heart. When Noah texted, inviting him to a gallery event, Eli hesitated. Each step closer to Noah felt like a step toward danger. Yet he couldn't stay away. The gallery event was a glittering affair, Manhattan's art scene in full swing. Noah was there, camera slung over his shoulder, his smile cutting through the crowd. They moved through the exhibits together, their banter easy, but Eli's eyes kept searching Noah's face for traces of Jake. Was it fair to judge him for his brother's sins? Noah's hand found Eli's, grounding him, and for a moment, the noise of the past quieted. But the past wasn't done with them. Halfway through the night, a familiar face appeared. Jake Hensley, older but unmistakable, his quarterback swagger unchanged. He was there as a guest, mingling with collectors, oblivious to Eli's presence. Eli froze, his breath shallow, as memories flooded back, the taunts, the shoves, the humiliation. Noah noticed, his brow furrowing. "You okay?" he asked, following Eli's gaze. When he saw Jake, his face darkened. What's he doing here? What happens when your tormentor steps back into your life, uninvited? How do you face the source of your pain while standing beside someone you're falling for? Eli's voice shook as he told Noah the truth, how Jake's bullying had left scars that never fully healed. Noah's jaw tightened, his hand squeezing Eli's. "I didn't know it was that bad," he said, voice low. "I should have done something back then." The admission was raw, but it wasn't enough. Eli needed more than regret. He needed to know where Noah stood. They left the gallery, the city's lights blurring as they walked in silence. Noah stopped, turning to Eli. "I'm sorry," he said, his eyes searching. "I was a kid, scared of Jake, scared of everything. But I'm not that kid anymore." Eli wanted to believe him, but the sight of Jake had reopened old wounds. Could Noah ever understand the depth of that pain? And what did it mean that Jake was here, in Eli's world, threatening the life he'd built? As they parted, Noah's touch lingered, a promise of something more. But Eli's mind was elsewhere, replaying Jake's smirk, the way it still held power over him. What would it take to reclaim that power? And could he do it without losing Noah? The questions followed him home, where he picked up his brush, painting not just his pain, but his defiance. This was his story now, and he wouldn't let Jake write the ending. Eli's brush moved furiously, each stroke a rebellion against the fear Jake's presence had reignited. The canvas before him was a storm of color blues and grays clashing with fiery oranges, a visual scream of everything he'd survived. But survival wasn't enough anymore. He wanted to confront the past, to make Jake see the man he'd become. What does it mean to face your bully years later, when you're no longer the scared kid? How do you hold someone accountable without losing yourself to anger? Eli's phone buzzed Noah, asking to meet again. The message was simple, but it carried weight. "I need to talk about Jake." Eli's heart sank. Was Noah defending his brother, or was this a chance to finally understand? They met at a quiet diner, the kind where truckers and artists shared booths over greasy coffee. Noah looked tired, his usual warmth dimmed. "Jake's in town for a week," he said, staring at his mug. "He's working some finance job, acting like he owns the world." Eli's jaw clenched. Of course Jake had landed on his feet. Bullies always seemed to. Noah's eyes met his, heavy with guilt. "I didn't know how bad it was for you, Eli. I swear. I was too caught up in my own stuff to see it." The confession landed hard. Noah hadn't been cruel, but his silence had let Jake's cruelty thrive. What does it mean to forgive someone who stood by while you suffered? Eli's voice was steady as he recounted the worst moments, the slurs, the shoves, the way Jake's friends had joined in. Noah listened, his face paling, his hands gripping the table. I should have stopped him, he whispered. I was weak. Weakness wasn't an excuse, but it was human. Eli saw the shame in Noah's eyes, the same shame he'd carried for years, believing he deserved Jake's hate. Could he hold Noah accountable without pushing him away? The diner's neon buzzed, mirroring the tension between them. Noah reached for Eli's hand, but Eli pulled back, not ready to bridge that gap. I need time, Eli said, standing. Noah nodded, his expression a mix of hope and fear. As Eli walked home, the city's pulse matched his own, restless, searching. He thought of his art, how it had saved him, how it could be his weapon now. What if he used his next exhibition to tell his story, to expose Jake's cruelty through paint and canvas? The idea was thrilling, terrifying. It could ruin Jake or it could ruin Eli. Back in his apartment, Eli sketched ideas, each one bolder than the last. A series of paintings, each capturing a moment of pain, survival, and defiance. But as he worked, Noah's face kept creeping into his thoughts. Could he create this without hurting the man he was falling for? And what would it mean to hold this power to destroy Jake, or to choose something else? Eli's studio was a battlefield of color, sketches scattered like shrapnel. His new project consumed him, a series called Unsilenced, each painting a chapter of his high school hell, with Jake at the center. The work was raw, unflinching, a reckoning in oil and acrylic. But as the canvases took shape, so did his doubts. What would exposing Jake cost him? And what about Noah, caught in the crossfire? What does it mean to seek justice through art? How do you balance vengeance with healing? Eli's phone lit up with Noah's name, a reminder of the connection he couldn't shake. They hadn't spoken since the diner, but Noah's message was simple. Can we talk? I miss you. Eli's heart twisted. He missed Noah too, the way he listened, the way he saw Eli's soul in his art. But trust was a fragile thread, and Jake's shadow kept pulling it taut. They met at a rooftop bar, the city sprawling below like one of Eli's paintings. Noah looked nervous, his camera absent, his hands fidgeting. I talked to Jake, he said, voice low. I told him what you told me. Eli's blood ran cold. You what? Noah rushed on. I needed him to know what he did. He didn't deny it. Eli. He just shrugged, like it was nothing. The words were a punch, confirming what Eli had always feared. Jake felt no remorse. What do you do when the person who hurt you refuses to care? How do you move forward when the past won't apologize? Noah's eyes were pleading. I told him he was wrong. I told him I'm ashamed to be his brother. The confession shook Eli. Noah had chosen him, had confronted Jake, risking family for truth. But the victory felt hollow. Jake's indifference stung, and Noah's loyalty came too late to erase the pain. Eli shared his plan for Unsilenced, watching Noah's reaction. It's not just about Jake, Eli said. It's about everyone who's been hurt, who's been silenced. Noah nodded, his expression a mix of pride and fear. It's powerful, he said. But it'll change everything. Are you ready for that? The question hung heavy. Was Eli ready to expose his truth, knowing it could destroy Jake's reputation and maybe Noah's too? As they stood on the rooftop, the wind carrying the city's hum, Noah stepped closer. I'm with you, he said, his voice steady. Whatever you decide. The words were a balm, but they didn't erase the fear. Eli's art was his power, but it was also a weapon. Could he wield it without losing the man standing beside him? And what would it mean to face Jake again? Not as a victim, but as someone with the strength to fight back. The gallery was booked, The date set Unsilenced would debut in a month. Eli poured every ounce of himself into the paintings, each one a scream, a whisper, a triumph. But as the exhibition neared, so did his fear. Jake was still in New York, his presence a shadow over Eli's work. And Noah, ever supportive, was a reminder of the delicate balance Eli walked: love versus justice, forgiveness versus truth. What does it mean to reclaim your story through art? How do you hold on to love while confronting pain? Noah helped with the exhibition, hanging canvases, offering quiet encouragement. Their bond deepened, late nights in the studio turning into moments of vulnerability. Noah shared his own struggles growing up under Jake's dominance, feeling invisible in his own family. "I saw what he did to you," Noah admitted one night, his voice breaking. "I was too scared to speak up. I hate myself for that." The confession cracked something in Eli. Noah wasn't Jake, but his silence had been its own kind of wound. Could Eli forgive him without forgiving Jake? They kissed, the studio's dim light casting shadows over half-finished paintings. It was a moment of connection, but also of truth. Loving Noah meant facing the past head-on, no matter how much it hurt. Days before the exhibition, Eli got a message that stopped his heart. "Jake wanted to meet. Heard about your show?" The text read, "We should talk." Eli's hands shook as he showed Noah. "What does he want?" Noah's voice was tight, protective. "I don't know," Eli said, but he felt the old fear creeping back. Was Jake threatened by Unsilenced? Did he know it was about him? What do you do when your bully demands a confrontation? How do you face the past without letting it consume you? Eli agreed to meet, choosing a public park, neutral ground. Jake arrived, all charm and confidence, but his eyes were cold. "Nice life you've built," he said, smirking. "Heard your show's a big deal." Eli's voice was steady as he replied, "It's about truth. Something you wouldn't understand." Jake's smile faltered, but he shrugged. "People move on. Eli, maybe you should too." The words were a blade, but Eli didn't flinch. He saw Jake for what he was: a man clinging to a fading myth of power. As Jake walked away, Eli felt a shift. He wasn't the scared kid anymore. He had Noah, his art, and a story to tell. But the question remained, would Unsilenced be his revenge or his redemption? The night of Unsilenced arrived, the gallery pulsing with anticipation. Eli stood by his paintings, each one a piece of his soul, vivid, raw, unapologetic. The crowd whispered, their eyes tracing the story of a boy who survived hate, who turned pain into power. Noah was there, his presence a quiet strength. But Eli's nerves crackled. Would Jake show up? Would the world see his truth? What does it feel like to expose your scars to strangers? How do you stand tall when the past threatens to pull you under? As the crowd grew, Eli spotted Jake in the back, his face unreadable. Panic flared, but Noah's hand on his shoulder steadied him. "You've got this," Noah whispered. Eli nodded, stepping forward to speak. His voice carried the weight of years, telling the story behind Unsilenced, not just his, but every kid who'd been bullied, silenced, made to feel less. The room was silent, absorbed, as Eli spoke of pain, resilience, and the power of art. He didn't name Jake, but the paintings did, their imagery unmistakable to anyone who knew the truth. Jake's jaw tightened, his eyes darting to Noah, then back to Eli. For the first time, Eli saw fear in him, the fear of being seen for who he really was. What happens when the bully faces the consequences of their actions? How does it feel to hold that power? After the talk, Jake approached, his voice low. "You think this changes anything?" he said, but his bravado was thin. Eli met his gaze. "It changes everything. Because I'm not afraid of you anymore." Jake left without another word, the crowd parting around him like a fading shadow. Noah pulled Eli aside, his eyes shining with pride. "You were incredible," he said, pulling him into a hug. The embrace was a promise, a shared victory. But as the night ended, Eli felt a new weight. He'd reclaimed his story, but at what cost? Jake's world might crumble, but Noah would feel the fallout too. Could their love survive that? The days after Unsilenced were a whirlwind. Reviews poured in, calling Eli's work brave, transformative. Social media buzzed with stories of others who'd survived bullying, inspired by his art. But Eli's heart was heavy. Jake's silence since the exhibition felt like a storm waiting to break. And Noah was quieter too, grappling with his brother's exposure. What does it mean to win a battle but risk the war? How do you hold on to love when the truth reshapes everything? Eli and Noah met at their favorite cafe, the same one where it all began. Noah looked worn, his camera untouched. "Jake's leaving New York," he said. "He's shaken. I've never seen him like this." Eli waited, sensing there was more. "He asked me to choose," Noah continued, voice breaking. "Him or you." The words were a knife. Noah had confronted Jake, stood by Eli, but family ties were strong. What would it mean to ask Noah to cut them? Eli reached for his hand. "I don't want you to lose your brother," he said. "But I need you to see me, not him." Noah's eyes met his, steady despite the pain. "I see you, Eli. I always have." They talked for hours, unraveling the past, building something new. Noah chose Eli, not out of anger toward Jake, but out of love for the man who'd shown him what courage looked like. Together, they decided to create a joint project, blending Eli's paintings with Noah's photos, telling stories of healing and hope. Months later, their exhibit opened, a celebration of love born from pain. Jake didn't come, but his absence was a gift. Eli and Noah stood together, their art a testament to survival, to the power of choosing love over hate. What does it mean to hold the power to destroy, but choose to create instead? For Eli, it meant freedom not just from Jake, but from the fear that had defined him. And for Noah, it meant stepping out of his brother's shadow, into a life where love was his truth.